Thank you. Buongiorno. I would like to thank the organizers first for having us. This talk is going to be in English, unfortunately, but my husband has kindly provided the Italian translation, Andrea Cucina, who's also my colleague. So I really enjoy being here, learning more about the other side of the Atlantic. We work, as you know, in Mexico. And so this will be necessarily work of you from afar. I want to admit that we have also happily fervent followers of the French archeology in our work group and other colleagues. I personally had the opportunity to work directly with Henri Dudet, who you know has spearheaded this fine way of doing human taphonomy worldwide. And well, I'm happy to learn more and share more in this talk. So, given the time frame, I would like to complement my in extenso that I have already submitted, the written version. And hopefully this will give lots of points of departure for discussion, questions. Talking about human sacrifice departure, I think, is the notion of the body in Mesoamerica and especially among the ancient Maya. Also the notion of theophagy, the consumption of body and body parts by the gods in a cyclic notion of a cosmic universe, which is very far from our Occidental way of unilateral destiny. There's a metamorphosis that accompanies death that returns everything towards life. One component substitutes and defines another. It's called cash in Quiché Maya, the substitution, the turning into ancestors. Obviously, these specific mortuary pathways of ritual violence and post-sacrificial processing, which I will not dichotomize in terms of funerary, non-funerary, as Henri has pointedly pointed out. This is a very complex undertaking, very difficult, polymorph diversity of funerary rites. So talking about the body, Mesoamericans thought and still think that the body was composed of a host of different hard substances, matter, and material component constituents, like the tone, the heat, which had to do with the sacred heart, or the hiotl, that's local in the liver. So these to be an active converse and would gradually disintegrate with, during, and past death with decomposition, a long process during the normal way of death. So how would this play out in the classic Maya phrenology? My epigrapher colleagues have detected or have analyzed sets of notions like the olis, or the divine heart essence, which was thought to have its locus in the pericardium or on top of the heart, and obviously was the key substance was donated to the divine in Maya heart sacrifice. And there's also the keen, the animated heat that had to do with solar forces that could come out of the crown of the head or the nostrils, the divine breath, and all sorts of other forces and essences that were actively conversing through the social body, intrinsic, extrinsic, divine forces in a sort of from a sort of blueprint of the body itself in the native notion. So it is not hard to understand that notions also played out directly in commonplace ritual self-inflicted sacrifice that were motivated by the communication with the divine, invocation events, propitiatory ceremonies, different religious occasions. So these also included mutilation, parts and the donation of blood or pain, because blood as a divine essence and was often or was conflated with the nervous circulation, which made the body dynamic and made the body go on, the mirror of the cosmos, as you know. So pain also played out an important role, a pivotal role in other liminal events. For example, in the self-inflicted pain and initiation rites, like carving the body of youngsters, which was accompanied by a lot of pain, as you can imagine in this presentation from China. So, many of these notions are also present in the culmination of ritual life, the ritual killings of victims, of humans, that were highly institutionalized, highly coded ritual forms that were often prolonged. They needed prolonged presentations and were headed by ritual specialists, mostly aristocrats from the centers of kingdoms. Here, the victims themselves became the vehicles for renovation and permanence of the living. So again, during the preservation, oh, we don't see this very sharply here, but anyway, many of the elements I just pointed out were very important, such as forced bloodletting of the victims, excruciating pain imposed by the captors, by the ritual leaders, the mutilation of body parts, which obviously in an increasingly divided political environment played out as suitable forms of power display by the captors, of course. So, culminating events, the pivotal ceremonies induced mythical concurrence bar event by all the players with the divine, and the culminating in the ritual immolation of the victim, which was a scenification with cathartic characteristics in midst of music, dance, in midst of invocations by light. There's a strong cratyphonic element, which of course finds parallels in most other cultural spheres. But here again, it's the violent release of body essence, of vital essences towards the divine spheres. Okay. Material signatures of these we find, for example, in the form of sharp force trauma and green bone, of articulated skeletons, in those that still preserve their primary and also, I think the transformative powers of fire plays a much higher role in the processing or in the death of those victims, as we could document in one case from Tikal. It's a double immolation, half-burned primary multiple, burned on an astronomical axis, an E group in Tikal during the time of contact with Teotihuacan. As you can see here, they still hold their pugilistic posture and then were just filled in as an materialized cosmogonic myth that was still known to, among the Aztecs, like Nanahuatzin the Young and the Old God, or the hero twins that sprang into the fire to turn into the sun, and in such a way dynamized, they permeated the cosmos and brought life. This is also the key topic that we're organizing for Dumbarton Oaks event this year, and I think this is a point of departure which has still much to give. Interestingly, the ritual in this act lost its individual qualities. It became the cosmos. It was like a shortcut of lustration and purification and deification thus. And so it was not as an ancestor but a relic, which probably we can understand, therefore, that there's much more body processing in post-sacrificial ceremonies than in your usual funerary rites. But again, we cannot generalize about that. A nice representation comes from the ball court of Chichen Itza, already dominated by the cult to Quetzalcoatl, of those escapes of vital components. As you see, the headless body on the right shows blood spurting out 7 divine serpents. The head itself, the feathers come out of the head, and the ball itself, it's not a decorated skull, it's a skull that's the seed of life. It's all those little signs that you see coming out. Oh. Again, this is not working. Yeah, there it is. Are different living forces, divine. Doesn't stop here, of course. I don't have time to mention the Y creature who are devourers of body parts, balls, bones, skulls. These were still thought to be charged with vital energy and probably find their substantiation in all of those finger catches, head or hand deposits. Okay, I won't torture you with all those signatures. I just want to point out what we try to systematically dissect the mortuary register to sort out different forms of discard from other deviant or burials. But we, as I said, it's hard to say or speak of normal burial rituals. What I can say is that there are particular characteristic signatures that we also sort out in terms of sex and age profiles that talk of lots of body processing, for example, in terms of skinning, defleshing, fire use, or deposits in non-domestic spaces like ritual caves, or the position itself that is unusual. The great majority of these remains are in isolated, commingled problematic deposits, and we these are from non-funerary rituals. So I want to close this by saying that past the classic, at the close of the classic, there's a renovation. Pan-Mesoamerican elements come in. There's a high reliance on highland ideological repertoires, like the new fire ceremonies after every 52 years. Here you see in the Borgia Codex Quetzalcoatl lighting the new fire and renovating the cosmos on the chest of Xiuhtecutli, the death god, who is covered with fire serpents. There are the sheepish rituals, which probably are showcased for the first time in Chichen Itza. Here you find the first examples in the bioarchaeological records of Tzopantli skulls. It's an intimidating and austere architecture that represents over and over again human sacrifice, the hearts, the jaguars, and Quetzalcoatl, and probably anticipates what is to follow in the post-classic, in the Maya area and beyond. Like, for example, the emulation of sheep rituals. Priests would put on the skin for of time of their victims after cutting the hands and the feet off. There's also another element that is the scenification of skeletonized but still articulated corpses. We have documented for Champoton on the Gulf Coast of who appear a lot in rituals and are even documented in the calendars by written sources. So this leads us to a couple of points of discussion that I hope I have incentivated here, like theophagy, the idea of consumption, sacrifice and the permanence of the cosmos, bodies and sacrifice, and post-sacrificial pathway in the planting of seeds. And of course, the communication among different areas, different research lines and perspectives, the discursive media in our case, and material remnants. We're lucky to have that in the Maya area, as you have seen. So I end this with giving my credits, of course, and the acknowledges, and grazie mille for listeners.